They are something that you should review every now and then because they define behaviors, and people are smart.
Even if I have all the knowledge, I have to then play that out, and I have to be consistent.
I think that's what it has done to us culturally. We become resilient. In return, all of this does lead to performance. It is in the other way around.
The amount of data and information they gain is so significant to help them really understand what's going on.
Creating an organization that future generations can relate to and would love to be a part of.
Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of Habits of High Performing Organisations. I'm thrilled to be joined by Anjali this morning. I will pass over to introduce herself. As you know, this is a series of discussions with thought leaders in the HR space globally around habits of high performing organisations. Anjali, would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Johanna. First of all, thank you so much for having me here on this podcast. Very quickly for the audience, I'm Anjali Raghuvanshi. I am based out of Bangalore, and I am the Chief People Officer for Randstad India, and I also manage the Global Capability Center for Randstad globally. So that's slightly about myself. And yes, I come from the northern part of the country. So that I'm a very good mix of the north and south in India. So kind of bringing the two worlds together.
Thank you. And we'll touch a little bit around kind of culture and nuances we're going through the conversation. I'm thrilled to have you here. We've obviously had a number of conversations around HR and culture and how that drives organisational performance. And I want to just really start with a kind of a broad question around how your career has really shaped, and what, as a Chief People Officer, do you really see as the key things that have shaped people and culture, but as they connect to business performance?
Absolutely. So it's almost been a decade for me in this in a CHRO, wearing a CHRO hat, and in the last decade, I have seen so much change within the HR space in general, and I think that's also something very exciting about the HR space, because it's a very highly volatile, evolving, and constantly shifting, paradigm shifting as such. So of course, my role, I think I'm one of those people who have internally grown in the organization. So it's about really growing on the backdrop of performance, grit, and agility, because it's very important, especially when you're growing internally. You have to really show performance, or you have to really be ready for the opportunity for you to really get in. So I think, and that's also makes the journey even more satisfactory, because you know that you have earned it, and and you are ready for it. So I would say that. And my entire journey, of course, started with building a huge credibility for HR as a function, because being in HR industry, our businesses see HR all over, and they meet some of the best HR people in the industry. So it's always, as a function, you have to really work hard to keep up with the pace of the industry, because you want your business to feel that they have the best function supporting them. So I really worked very hard in building that credibility within the organization, both internally and externally. That also became a great foundation for attracting the best talent in the industry, because once internally we had the name, so we had our champions internally who would go out and speak and say, yes, Randstad has a great culture, it's a people first organization. And externally, through Great Place to Work, through various platforms like IWEI, we really built a foundation, and we also built a great brand for ourselves, that we are a company people should be coming and joining, because we do bring the best culture. And not just culture, but also, as the podcast goes, building a high performing organization. The beauty of a high performing organization is that it really prepares you for the future, because when you are high performing, you are also in a way tackling the challenges that the future brings to you, and not just being complacent and being mediocre in the way you operate. So I think it's been really evolving with the organization. I truly believe in partnering. I do not think that HR as a function can stay in isolation of business. You are because of business, and you are here to support and enable the business in the best way possible. So I'm always, if business is in the driver's seat, I'm always in the navigation seat, where I'm helping them, facilitating them through the journey, and co-creating with them initiatives, and to ensure that we as an organization are always moving forward. So I would say that's what defines my journey as a CHRO. And I think in the last 10 years, be it digital, be it machine learning, be it AI, everything has come. Recruitment as an industry has been disrupted several times. First, it was like LinkedIn would kill recruitment. Then it was like, now, the whole digital marketplace would kill recruitment. Why would anybody go to a recruiter when we can create a Uber kind of platform, or Uberization of recruitment? So I think this industry really gets challenged every now and then. And helping it navigate through that, really realizing what can human bring to this industry, and how can we create difference while adapting and embracing everything that's coming our way. I think it's been a very challenging piece, and I personally believe fulfilling, challenging, and at the same time, I think happy to be able to steer the organization in the right way. I would say that's how I would define my career in a nutshell, in terms of how it has been. And of course, in the entire process, always remembering that doing the right things by the people is also very important, because you're not creating a brand for just today, you're creating a brand for future. And especially in the eye of social media, where every action of yours gets judged and spoken about, it's very important that you are doing the right thing, and you are creating an organization that future generations can relate to and would love to be a part of.
And I think those are like some really fundamental points. And as you were describing the impacts that external things have on a business model. And I was just interested, as you were talking there, I was just thinking, do you think that actually the fact that an industry like the recruitment talent acquisition industry has been disrupted on many occasions builds a certain type of culture in your industry, Anjali?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it naturally makes you a survivor, having this sort of a thing. And as I speak about this, it's like, if every 2 years, everything that you've been building kind of gets, sort of challenged or questioned, what you've been building as a foundation. I also look at the Japanese example, right? Every now and then a volcano or an earthquake keeps challenging Japan as a country, but they are so resilient, and they kind of come up and, in fact, be even better than the previous time. I think that's what it has done to us culturally. We become resilient. We know that this is going to come. This will, kind of sort of challenge us in one way or the other. So how is it that we prepare ourselves to not be completely washed out as a disruption comes in? What can we do? But while it, of course, has made us focus on today, which is like, are we performing today? It has also started to make us be more future ready, or be more future focused as well. While I know nobody has a crystal ball, nobody can say how future would look like tomorrow. But the fact is that whatever information we have, we try to build on it and work on it. So for instance, if I look at our go-to market, I mean, I know, and I will talk about India, because many of our competition, or within our competitive landscape, we still have organizations who have a very generic outlook towards staffing as an industry, or HR as an industry. But Randstad shifted and moved towards a very highly skilled, more focused towards skilling as a organization, which has also become made us more closer to clients. We are not talking about more real time challenges that the clients have with the lack of the right talent or right skills being available for them. That shift has really evolved our conversation with the client. We are not talking transactions, we are talking transformation, we are talking skills, we are talking how can I solve this problem for you. I think that is very important, because that is what then keeps you keeps you floating in a time when everything is tested around you. So I think that is a long term outlook in our industry that we should have, because if we are not solving clients problems, then why are we here? Why do we exist? And at the same time, we are that one bridge between the client and the talent. So we also have to be somebody who is building a great base for talent and is a thought leader in that space and is representing the talent to the client in the best possible way. So
Yeah.
we have to fulfill this role well, and we are representing this huge mass out there in the world, and we have to represent it well. So I think that outlook has ensured that despite 65 years of our legacy, we are ready for another 65. Otherwise, it's like you would be just like any of those industries, I mean companies that come and go, because they are just here for a short run and not really from a long run perspective. So I would say these have created three very distinct behaviors in the company. One is, of course, having the survivor mindset. Second is being very resilient, and third is having the grit. Because for you to really survive these disruptions, you have to have these behaviors being orchestrated for you to be there in the long run. And while many will think that okay, it's about technical skills, but it is about your mindset at the end
Mm.
of the day. It is technical skills can be learned if you have the willingness to learn. You have those basic skills, you can. But mindset is a very difficult thing to build and maintain and continue with it, be consistent about it. So I think we do help our employees build that, and then no matter what, whether Randstad or not Randstad, they can survive anywhere.
Yes, yeah. No, I really like that. And I think that we know that there are so many things that are happening to organizations at the moment that are out of their control, as you talked a little bit about that Japanese analogy. And we know that it's no longer just the ability to go and say, I want to hire someone that can do these particular things in a job, because actually there is just this constant change, this constant disruption, whether it's technology disruption, whether it's political instability, whether it's economics. And so there are all these external factors that are constantly impacting how we're operating and the way that we need, particularly leaders, for and how they're operating. We've spoken a little bit before around this future of leader, and that they need to be, and I really like some of the words that you're using, like empathetic, having grit, resilience, in a world that is shaped, particularly around the AI transformation and disruption. What is it that you think that organizations need to be hiring for, particularly in that executive or senior leadership population?
Yes. I think to me, as I said, right, it's a future which is not always clear to us. There's no crystal ball any of us hold, and we know exactly how it will be next 3 years or 5 years down the line. In a situation like this, I always believe that inclusive leaders thrive, empathetic leaders thrive. Because, and why do I say inclusive? I'm not saying because I'm this HR person and hence I want to build this, in the organization, and that's the only reason. I have seen it succeed because inclusive leaders are listeners. They do not just believe in that I only need to kind of either it's just my opinion that should be pushed down onto the organization, but they do believe that taking different perspectives from the ground, getting the ground intelligence is actually very, very important in running an organization which is sort of runs together, where people do feel that yes, they belong. Because all of us know, and if I were to ask these questions to our audience individually, where would you give your best? An organization where you truly think you belong, where you feel a part of it, or will you be giving your best to an organization where you don't even know where the leadership is going, what's happening, and you don't even feel a part of it? Yep,
Yeah,
the answer is very simple and clear. You would be giving your best to an organization where you do feel part of it. You feel part of the journey. You know that what you are creating with the larger leadership as such. So I think inclusive leaders have the ability to do that. And that is what then differentiates a great organization from a mediocre organization. And empathy is another very important skill that a lot of people misunderstand. Empathy, they feel that it's a very soft skill, and it's all about being nice and easygoing. It is not about that. Empathy is actually being very honest about things, and at the same time really truly realizing the results of your action, and being respectful about whatever you as an organization are doing. Because it's a fact that right now, with so much of volatility and geopolitical situations, organizations have been making tough decisions, but it's
Mm.
about how you make those tough decisions. That goes a long way. We've made some tough decisions on certain people, and yet some of those people would love to come back to the organization. Why would they want to do that? Because they know that no matter what, it was all done with respect, and that situation has changed. They can always now come back and do their best. So I think these are long term behaviors. These are not behaviors that just define your short run. Of course, you will have to do all of this with performance being the key core in the center, but we also have to realize that in return, all of this does lead to performance. It is in the other way around. So um, this is where I do believe that these two skills, if you have, and I look for it, I have always seen it work in the long run. And skills, and when you have people along with you, everybody wants to give their best. So you kind of run a great team, and trying to do best in the role that you have. So I would always look for these if I'm really looking at a leader who is going to lead a good span of control within the organization. Because it's also about culture add, right? I mean, with great difficulty as an organization, you create a culture of high performing organization. Now every new addition is a disruption in a way within the internal organization. How do you ensure that that disruption isn't the negative disruption, but is actually is a culture add, which means it's actually adding on or enhancing what you already have. So hence, especially for leadership hiring, you have to be very very conscious about it, and be very clear about what is it that you're adding into the organization. What do you want? What you already have. So it's a very good calculative risk that all of us take as an organization, especially in the leadership hiring. And I think the more conscious, the more aware you become of that, the more mindful act you will be making, which goes a long way in really ensuring that it's a stable. When I say stable, of course, doesn't mean that it just stays at a incremental improvement sort of a way, but stable in the sense so that the ship is running, ship is not sinking as you're
Yeah.
trying to really, be floating on the sea. So that's my take on leadership hiring, Joanna.
No, thank you. And I think you talked about some really important points. And I think that point around listening is so fundamental. I always say it's the most underrated leadership skill. And it sounds so simple, but it's incredible how many people really struggle with genuine listening. So I'm asking you a question to listen to what you're telling me, rather than I'm asking a question to then move on to my next, to then tell you my perspective. And I think when leaders have that both ability to be empathetic alongside listening, the amount of data and information they gain is so significant to help them really understand what's going on in their organization. I think one of the biggest challenges, if we're thinking about building leadership capability now and in the future, is that we know that some of the things that you were just talking to now are the behaviours that we really need to instill for our leaders as we're navigating over the next 5 to 10 years. And from experience, and we talked about this a little bit before, that kind of very traditional approach of sending leaders off, putting them on training, expecting them to come back into an incredibly busy, full-on executive leadership role, and to have retained all of that information is often really difficult. How do you, and what are some of your thoughts on, and how do you build that learning experience that means that it really sticks from that leadership development perspective?
Yes, I think for especially for learning and development as a function, it's a question they sort of struggle every year, which is on the return on investment. You've invested so much on the learning initiatives, and How is it that you measure that it's really kind of paying off? I do believe that one, it's definitely very difficult for a learning and development team to define that, because there could be so many factors that sort of lead to it. So really isolate all factors and coming to the learning as an opportunity and say, yes, this happened only because of our intervention, is always a challenging task for all of us to defend in front of our management teams. But I would say that I look at it like this. It's a one habit a day sort of a situation, right? It never happens like, oh, I finished the intervention and the very next day the behaviors of the entire leadership team or entire population has just changed. It's about many things that go into it. One is, of course, kind of breaking down the whole thing into certain parts, and because otherwise it's very difficult to consume a big long 2 day 3 day session and understand what exactly you have to do. So break it down, make it simple for them. Reinforcement: how are you reinforcing this behavior? Who is your champion? Who is supporting you in this? As a function alone, we cannot really be the only champion who are there. So I think really having all the leadership being your champion, and they truly believing that why are we doing this and how are we creating this, I think is very important. And reinforcement happens when at every part of the organization, people are seeking that change in your behavior, whether it's your manager, whether it's your manager's manager or the super boss. So really taking leadership along with it. So I've always been very clear that you pick your interventions, and when you pick your interventions for the year, you rally behind it. You just don't do something as a tick box and just leave it over there, but really rally behind it and make it like a long term. And especially with after COVID, a lot of us have gone hybrid in the way we operate, even in the learning piece. So we have blended learning, and so you can really kind of pull a intervention for a longer period of time. Don't have to end it with a 3 day sort of a thing. So I think that also helps in ensuring that it's something that gets talked about through the year and not something that just got done in the classroom and we forgot about it. So one habit at a time, reinforcing it, creating champions and sponsors for yourself, then also reaching out and asking the managers, what shift did you see? Did it really work for you? So that when you run the next batch, you've already taken those inputs and you are improvising on what you've already done. I think that closing the loop also is a very important thing for you to really reinforce that behavior. So I think, and then when you see the behavior, then champion it, then recognize it and celebrate it. So that's also something I always tell L&D team, that if you've seen somebody who feel that they saw a change, ask them to come and talk about it. Let more people in the organization listen to it. Let their managers celebrate it. So I think all of these things are the ones which can help really drive the behaviors. And I also feel that as an organization, we shouldn't clutter. If we did too many things, how will I mean, today, the amount of span of attention that all of us have today. It's like we can very quickly get defocused with multiple things kind of hitting us at the same time, with so many screens in front of us. So I think it's very important that you choose what you want to build, and focus on those. Not do like 200 programs, 300 programs, and nobody is getting anything out of it. And it's also money, right? You are at the end of the day investing that money. So I believe in this as a core in driving behaviors across the organization. And I think leadership plays the biggest role, because if your leaders aren't talking about it, it's very easy for employees to just drop the ball and shift to something else that is more important to the leader. The leader
Yeah.
has to be, and I'm talking, when I say leader, it's the CEOs, it's the leadership CXO team who are the champions in the organization. They do have a great influence on the organization, and they must use that influence that they have.
And I think you said something as you were talking around that you have to rally behind it. And I absolutely echo everything that you were saying there, Anjali. The forming habits, and we've talked about this a lot, is so fundamental, because we can't wake up one day and say, I am going to be a more authentic leader. Even if I have all the knowledge, I have to then play that out, and I have to be consistent. And some of the things that make great leaders are actually things that we often think are as boring or not the exciting part, but actually building something so that you are consistent gives people clarity about who you are as a leader. And if you're starting to nudge your behavior change, forming these habits is really important in being successful, because then you're moving that from being what was once a conscious action to an unconscious action. But I think that it was really interesting when you're talking about kind of everything rallying around it. It's not just a single action. It's not just the leadership program, but it's a combination of both leadership behaviours, the program design, and also what's going on in the system as the organisation to make that successful as well. And I think, like, if we were to look out for the next 5 years about thinking around high performing organizations and how do we help our leaders lead into high performing organization, and what do you think perhaps are some of those habits, those leadership habits that leaders need to prepare for now if they're going to be leading high performing organizations in the next 5 years?
Absolutely. I think, and I will go by my own experience as we've, worked on it. I think it almost becomes like the organization becomes like a research lab, because you let's say you created a great policy, because especially talking from a consulting space, right? You create a policy because consulting is always high on incentivizing behaviors, because you want people to have that profit sharing mindset, right? That okay, if organization is earning 100, I'm going to get a part of it for bringing the business that I'm bringing. So you always create a policy from a profit sharing standpoint, and then after you've created the policy, you have to watch the behavior of the people, and that's a research lab thing that I'm talking about. You watch the behavior, what is it driving in the organization, and for that you really have to be close to the ground. You have to listen to everything that's coming in, how sales is behaving, how delivery is behaving, how client partnership is behaving, how are the functional teams behaving, are they really rallying around what the business teams are trying to do, or they are in isolation trying to drive something completely different in their own world, right? So I have always noticed that sometimes you create a great policy for business but very poor policy for functions. And it so happens that while business is trying to get things done, invoices are not there on time, the payroll isn't happening on time, and functions are driving their own world. That's when you realize, oh, you need to do something this side as well, because they don't seem to be following the same piece over here. So you make some tweaks over there, and then you watch the behaviors here. Then you realize, okay, in business, while great business is coming, but some of the important things that matter to the client are being dropped down, because they are just focusing on revenue, and for them revenue for the organization, but where is the client in the picture?
Yeah,
Because ultimately client is the one who's giving you the business. So I think you begin to realize where the drop is falling, where the ball is dropping, where the ball is being picked up. I think all of that then tells you that, okay, what should you be now making changes in your policy for the next year. So we've always operated with that. So sometimes one function really does great, and because they have a great policy, and the other one does not. Then what you realize after you've done all of this is that, okay, there are some things which cannot be defined in the policy, because we can't write everything in the policy. So how do you drive the right behaviors in the people,
yeah,
that despite the policy they drive that behavior? That has to become fundamental in the organization. And that's when you start calling out people who drive values,
yeah,
so you cannot drop people who do not drive value in the organization. Then who's championing the talent, who's championing the client? So that's when you start looking at other aspects of recognizing the softer aspects of the work day on day basis. And that's where you kind of ensure that you have closed the circle, and ensure that the right behaviors are being picked up in the organization. And so you cannot, and because with all of this while you are doing, external factors are also constantly changing around you. So how do you pick the cues, and how do you embed it in what you are creating in the organization? It's important. So policies, which almost are looked upon as a boring documents kept in the back end of an organization, are actually extremely key to the organization. They should not just be left in in time, that okay, after every 3 years, every 4 years I will be reviewing. They are something that you should review every now and then, because they define behaviors, and people are smart. They will
yeah,
go read everything and they'll say, hey, this is what it says, so why is it that you are asking me to do something very different? So that is one. The second is, of course, constantly being on the ground, not being too far away from it, to design something that actually doesn't make any more sense in the organization. So you always have to be on your toes in doing that. And year on year, in fact, for us, it almost starts at the quarter 3 of every year, that start
Yes.
looking at what do you want to change the next year. So this is what, and this is a very fundamental operational tactical thing that must be in place for you to drive the right behaviors. And what we do is, it's never made in isolation here at Randstad. Finance, HR, leadership, they play a very key role in really defining what is it that we together need. And we are one organization which is very good in bringing the enablers and the business together, because we realize one doesn't exist without the other. We need both the clocks to kind of, the wheel to run and it to work. So I think these very fundamental things have ensured that we get it right and we keep moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Anjali. And I think that the point on that there are kind of many component parts around that is so so important, isn't it? And I think we often look at leadership behavior really in isolation of how the organization system is working, and those two things are not, they're not distinct. They're so interconnected. And what I often notice is organizations over index on focusing on one and not the other, and it's how are you getting that balance so that when you're trying to lead through this constant change that we know just exists because that's the way that the world operates, that we're looking at both of those things really importantly in parallel.
Absolutely.
Anjali, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast series. The points that you are making around driving an organization that is high performing, but through leaders that lead with empathy and that ability to listen and connecting that understanding to business performance, I think so fundamental. And I've really enjoyed listening to you and having you, and just thank you again for joining us on this series.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I've absolutely enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for having such meaningful questions as well.